Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to our reading and discussion of the book How to Know God, which is a workbook by Patanjali called his Yoga Sutras. This is the interpretation and commentary by Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher. Before we start, I'd like to make a few prefatory remarks. Swami Yogeshananda used to teach, consciousness is primary and is not plural. Consciousness is primary and is not plural. By primary, he meant foundational. Everything arises from consciousness and is not plural. So how do we understand the fact that there are 11 of us on these screens? Well, apparently this consciousness that is not plural quite deliberately created plurality. As Holy Mother tells us, human beings are endowed not only with goodness, sattva, but with profuse quantities of materialism and vanity, tamas and rajas. It was done quite deliberately so that this could exist, this apparent plurality. Now there are even more of us. Just joined, some people just joined. So how are we to understand this plurality? Well, this plurality was created so that we could be this, as I said, quite deliberately. Swami Sarvapriyananda was asked why, and he said, because it can, and that's the only answer that makes any sense as far as he's concerned, because it can. But what does this mean to us in terms of a book like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras? Patanjali's Yoga Sutra starts with the assertion, yoga is the stilling of the thought waves in the mind. To put this into Sanskrit, yoga is the cessation of the vrittis in the mind stuff. Vritti means whirlpool. What is a whirlpool? It pulls you downward. It pulls you into this reality of plurality. What is chitta? Chitta is the mind stuff. That all of what we use to discriminate and think and decide and so on. All of this is the mind stuff. So there are vibrations or whirlpools in this mind stuff. Where is the mind stuff? According to many traditions, including Pim van Lammel's scientific tradition represented in his book Consciousness Beyond Life. Consciousness Beyond Life. The mind stuff pervades the entire body, but also exists outside the body in what is called an etheric egg. So Sri Ramakrishna actually saw these eggs bouncing along. He found it quite amusing to see these eggs of people's mind stuff bouncing toward him as they walked toward him. Don Juan Matus mentions it from the Toltec tradition. It's in the Gnostic tradition. And among the Essenes, it was there also. So cessation of the vrittis in the mind stuff. That's what this book is teaching us to do. Now, what happens when we actually manage to still these whirlpools from pulling us down from our knowledge of our true original nature, which is primary and not plural, to this plurality? What happens? According to Swami Vivekananda in his preface to his interpretation and commentary of the sutras, which is called Raja Yoga, according to Swami Vivekananda, your universe disappears. The universe of our common, the one that we create in common, of course, does not disappear. But your universe disappears. And what replaces it cannot be said in words, it cannot be put into thoughts or ideas, because there is no mind there. So what we're being taught is to become free of all limitation, kaivalya, independent, free of all conditions and limitations. Then, if we're one of those who does return to the realm of plurality, we return to what we call our ordinary awareness, it is totally transformed by that state of experience that we had, a state of being, I should say, rather than experience. There is no experience because there's no experiencer. It's simply a state of being. But because of the extraordinary superconscious knowledge that we bring back from that, we are utterly transformed. So this is what Patanjali is teaching us in this workbook. It's in 8 steps, 6 of which, he says, involve our self-effort, and 2 of which are by grace, or they are something that happens to you. Sri Ramakrishna says, Mother turns the key in the lock, and you are released from limitation and conditions into a state beyond that. And this release is called samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi. And the state beyond that is called liberation, moksha, kaivalya, various words. So this is what we're studying. We've come a long way in the book, and a lot has been said, but I wanted to put it into context again for all of us. So if there's anyone who would like to make a comment about what has been said or anything else that we've been studying from their own wisdom or experience, or if you would like to raise a concern or ask a question, now is an appropriate time to do that. And is there anything that anyone would like to offer? And this is how we study the art of spirituality together, by sharing our wisdom and experience and our concerns and questions. Anything at all from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Nikali.
Yes, Michele.
Hi. Wouldn't it be that you have to be the observer because the reality is that we're never really separated from the creator. So to step out of it is to observe. I would think that would be that most helpful way.
Well, Michele, that is the preliminary step. This is what, before we are totally released from all limitation and conditions, we become that witness. We become that witness, which is the face of the Atman, this state beyond plurality, but it has this witness because it experiences our experiences and thereby, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, validates them. But it is that. And when we are fully in that witness, that state of the witness, that is called savikalpa samadhi. You're still the witness. There's still an experiencer, an experience, and that which is experienced. The experience that you experience in Savikalpa Samadhi is the total unity of being, but it is still within time, space, and causation. It is that being that created this plurality quite deliberately for its own purposes, as Holy Mother said when she told the story of it, and as Sri Krishna says in the Gita. So if we achieve nothing more than Savikalpa Samadhi, this preliminary step, we will have achieved much. And this is as a result of our self-effort. There's grace always, of course, just the grace to be a spiritual aspirant. But you're right, that witness position is where we end up as a spiritual aspirant and as someone who practices contemplation, concentration, and meditation. We end up becoming that witness presence. And it is freedom, but it is not the final and total freedom of being beyond all limitation and condition. Does that make it clear?
Yes. So it's a preliminary. I would imagine that there's great fear within as because you have to, it's a process of letting go. So I don't know if that's what Saint John of the Cross, the dark night of the soul, and others have experienced, if you have to go through that, because and just,
Yes.
I guess, constantly praying and asking for help and grace.
Well, Michele, there is the possibility of fear, but it is in as Vivekananda says, where there is love, there is no fear. Where there is fear, there cannot be love. So Sri Krishna over and over again in the Gita, and Patanjali gestures toward it through his recommendation that we had develop an intimate personal relationship with Ishvara, the creator being, this uh, loving relationship. Love drives out the possibility of fear stopping us. It isn't that fear doesn't arise. Just as a woman or man as a soldier going into battle experiences fear. Of course they're afraid, but they push through it. Their training is such that they push through it, and they do their job as a soldier anyway. This is exactly the same thing that we do uh, by the power of love. We push through the inevitable fear that our left mind throws up. It literally throws this fear in our face because if we succeed in achieving Savikalpa Samadhi, the left mind's job is essentially done in terms of controlling things. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, it becomes as a shy child. And so it is, fear is there. It's conquered by love. It gives us the strength and courage. Love does. The assurance of that love. Just as we said in the opening prayer, may the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. When we have that relationship and we know that love, it's very powerful indeed. But you're right, Michele, fear will be there.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother.
Thank you for bringing these things up. This is perfect. Anything else from anyone?
I'd like to say something about what Michele was talking about and what you were talking about. Love and fear. I think it's a matter of attention. But when we are desperately afraid or desperately anything that's dragging us down, sad, angry, sometimes it's too much to overcome.
Yes.
We can say in our heads, okay, I'm going to focus on the divine and the loving relationship. But if the negative, I don't like the word negative, but the fear or whatever is so great, it can just cloud it out. And it's helpful to have little touchstones that can break through. And it's going to be different for everybody. It may be your mantra, it may be a picture, it may be anything. But if it's something that you can rely on over and over again when you're really gripped by fear or sadness or whatever, it's not necessarily that it's going to just turn it upside down for you, but it will help and it will start you back to the place where love fills that space and crowds out the fear.
Really well said, all of that, dear. And yes, this is why the Swamis tell us when you are possessed in that way, just abide as best you can with whatever touchstones you have, whatever keeps you somewhat grounded in the face of this storm that you're going through. Michaela mentioned the dark night of the soul and other things. It's in that there are a number of the saints all tell us they all tell us that they went through this and that they experienced sadness and they experience anger and they experience all these things. So it's not as if it's something that is unique to us, but you said it very well. Said it very well indeed. We can just hold on and it too will pass. Everything within time, space, and causation arises and passes away. The good, the bad, the indifferent, the ugly, it all arises and passes away. So if we can just, the old spiritual says, hold on to that plow, hold on, hold on. Hold on to that plow, hold on. So just keep plowing that furrow and you will ultimately get the job done. But sometimes it is very difficult indeed. This is a hard world. This is the end of the Kali Yuga, we're told. This is a deeply dark time with lots of anguish and suffering and sorrow all around us. The collective unconscious, that unity that underlies our appearance of manyness, that collective unconscious, as Jung called it, is in terrible torment. There's also a lot of joy there, but Anyway, thank you, Cindy. That was very well said.
Hi, Brother Shankar, Sumesh here.
Yes, Sumesh.
See, when you said that this is the preliminary stage, the witness position is the preliminary stage. What came to my mind, and I just want to clarify that it's still my mind witnessing my mind, or my mind witnessing. It is still within my mind. It is happening.
Yes.
That's what is so preliminary about it. That is.
But it is the greater mind, not just the left mind. You've gone to that, what I characterized earlier as that entire etheric egg and everything it contains. The left mind is just a part of that. It's a part where many of these vrittis reside, but it's certainly not the totality of it. But when we step into that witness position, we begin to see, metaphorically speaking, we begin to see from the perspective of the entire etheric egg. And when we then become clear, when our vision becomes clear enough through our spiritual practices, then we are fully in that witness seat. That is what we are, and that's when we have this experience within it is still, as you say, within the time, space, and causation, which is projected by this etheric egg. Our universe is projected by this etheric egg. So it's still within that, but it is a transcendent state. And when we return from it, and we do return from it, we are transformed because we've had the experience of unity, even though the unity is just a little bit separated. We seem to be a part of it, not merged in it, not totally lost in it, which is a way of saying what happens in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. We become, as they say, one with Brahman. We are Brahman, rather than witnessing Brahman.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before we go on? Well, dears, thank you, all of you who shared. This is very productive. This is exactly what we should do, and I hope that these clarifications that came from the conversations and from those prefatory remarks make what we're going to read that much more meaningful to us. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to say about what you're about to read before you read it?
Well, brother, I was just thinking about how we're going to be really getting to the heart of the matter by going through all the 8 limbs of yoga in detail. So this is like the heart of the how-to book, and
Yes.
I appreciate your description of this book as a workbook, because that's pretty much exactly what it is.
Well, that's exactly what Patanjali said, and Vivekananda said he did it very scientifically. He created a very scientifically accurate workbook that if we follow it, it will yield the results of Savikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, no one can say whether that will happen to any given individual or not. And it really is not a matter of concern to us because we can't say anything about it. We don't know what it is. We know it's, quote, desirable, unquote, but that's all we can say. And certainly it makes saints. But it may not be our destiny in this lifetime to be a saint. You will become clean enough, so to speak, if you experience Savikalpa Samadhi. So thank you, Jeff. Yeah, you're right. We are at the heart of this workbook as he describes the 8 limbs of yoga. Anything else from anyone before Jeff reads?
Somesh just asked through the chat what page we're on, and because we have different editions, including me, the page numbers can be confusing. So let me just say that we're in chapter 2, which is yoga and its practice, and we're about to resume with shloka number 32.
Sloka number 32 in chapter 2.
Right.
That should be easy enough to find for anyone who has a copy of the book. Chapter 2, Sloka 32. Okay, dear, please proceed.
All right. Sloka 32. The niyamas or observances are purity, contentment, mortification, study, and devotion to God. And again, Shloka 32. The niyamas or observances are purity, contentment, mortification, study, and devotion to God. Purity is cleanliness, both physical and mental. If a man thinks of himself as being the dwelling place of the Atman, he will naturally feel that his body and mind have to be kept clean. External cleanliness is chiefly important because of its psychological effect upon us. The mere act of washing suggests the removal of mental as well as physical dirt. After a good bath, we are apt to say involuntarily, "Ah, now I feel better." The internal organs of the body must be cleansed and strengthened by following a proper diet. Similarly, we must follow a mental diet in order to cleanse and strengthen the mind. We must regulate our reading, our conversation, and indeed our whole intake of mental food. We must cultivate the society of those who are spiritually minded. This does not, of course, involve an absolute taboo on certain persons and topics on the grounds that they are worldly or sinful. Such negative puritanism would only lead to self-righteous pride and a furtive desire for what was forbidden. What really matters, as always, is our own attitude. If we never relax in the exercise of discrimination, we shall find that every human encounter, everything that we read or are told, has something to teach us. But this discriminative awareness is very hard to maintain, and so the beginner has to be careful. The danger in gossip, light entertainment, ephemeral journalism, popular fiction, radio romancing, etc., is simply this. They encourage us to drift into a relaxed reverie, neutral at first, but soon colored by anxieties, addictions, and aversions, so that the mind becomes dark and impure. Cleanliness of mind can only be maintained by constant alertness. Once thrown off its balance, said Saint Francois de Sales, if I'm saying that right.
No, you can just say Francis de Sales.
Okay.
That's the way it's normally pronounced in English.
All right. I always need help with pronunciation. St. Francis de Sales. Once thrown off its balance, the heart is no longer its own master. A Hindu teacher tells us, always talk to everyone about God. This is subtle and profound advice, for talking about God does not merely include the discussion of overtly religious topics. Almost any topic, no matter how seemingly worldly, can be considered in relation to the underlying spiritual reality. It is not so much what we talk about as how we talk about it that matters. Nor is it necessary to use such words as God, Spirit, prayer, etc. at all. These words serve to alienate unsympathetic hearers and make them feel that we are setting ourselves apart from them on a pedestal of holiness. We shall do better to remember that every human being is searching, however confusedly, for meaning in life and will welcome discussion of that meaning, provided we can find a vocabulary which speaks to his or her condition. If we approach conversation from this angle and conduct it with charity, frankness, sincerity, and a serious interest in the opinions of others, we shall be surprised to find how much tacit spiritual interchange can result from apparently casual talk about everyday events, science, art, politics, or sport. And we have, this is a lot of commentary, we have one more paragraph. As for the other observances, we have already considered the significance of mortification and study in commenting on the first aphorism of chapter 2. Contentment means contented acceptance of one's lot in life, untroubled by envy and restlessness. Since religious teachers are often accused of preaching passive acceptance of an unjust status quo, it is necessary to remark that Patanjali is not telling us to be contented with the lot of others. Such contentment would be mere callous indifference. We have no right to reprove a starving beggar for being discontented. Rather, as members of a community, we have a positive duty to help less fortunate neighbors toward better and fairer living conditions. But our efforts in this direction will be much more effective if they are not inspired by motives of personal gain and advantage. So that concludes a rather lengthy commentary. I thought we'd pause here.
Yeah, well, just if there's anything from anyone about what we've heard or read, this is, this is a building block process. So if we're clear about what's been said, if we feel secure and that we're clear about everything that's been said and what it is that the yamas, this was shloka 31, the restraints and the niyamas are, then we can go on to what follows. But this is a building block process by Patanjali. It doesn't mean we do these things serially. No, we do them together at once, but considering each one as, so to speak, in the beginning, considering it a sort of a compartment. We think of the way we think self-centeredly, and we think, well, these are things that I have to, if I'm going to progress. It isn't that I have to do them in any compulsory sense. If I'm going to progress along the path of yoga as described by Patanjali, I have to practice these restraints on self-centered behaviors. Why? If we're always self-centered, seeing things in terms of how it affects or advantages or disadvantages us, our mind is constantly distracted. There's no possibility of that restless mind moving on and practicing even the niyamas, let alone that which is beyond. So in the beginning, we practice restraint and we try to practice the observances together, and we practice these next two steps together, and we begin to make some progress. Oftentimes, this is a way that is we think of yoga as the postures, hatha yoga, asana as it is called by Patanjali. But oftentimes yoga teachers like Jyoti, Elizabeth Yates, who teaches yoga and lives part of the time here, she teaches the yamas and niyamas very gently in her teaching of yoga, because she says you can't even do the postures correctly if you're not in possession of the knowledge of the yamas and niyamas. And what they can do to interfere with and promote your successful accomplishment of the asanas. So,
Brother Sankara,
yes, dear.
I had one comment, and now because of what you just said, now I have two comments.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, I started going to a yoga studio here in Tallahassee, and I suppose I'm getting some benefit from it, but it is very disheartening to experience American yoga, which is totally extracted from its source. You know, there's no mention of anything except maybe how to breathe and breathe in here and breathe out there, and as you go through the different postures. But it's totally devoid of its context, and so I'm glad that at least I have enough experience to where I can carry my context with me.
Well, good, because this is a yoga teacher that is not teaching Patanjali. She's teaching one of the other teachers, Iyengar, or one of the other teachers that, as you say, has extracted this from its original source, which was done millennia ago. This is not something new, and is teaching it as a way to look better, feel better, live longer, things like that, but not as a way to make spiritual progress. So you're right, it can be disheartening to be in a class like that where there is no spiritual context for what you're doing. And the other comment?
The other comment is referring to Swami's comments about following a mental diet, regulating our reading, conversation, and our intake of mental food. I'd like to relate my experience of how I was changed in some way by my first and so far only visit to the Vedanta Center in St. Petersburg, Florida. I live alone, so I'm fairly used to always having something going yak, 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 yak in my house. It might be a TV, it might be the radio, it might be music because I am a musician of sorts. And that's been how I've been through most of my adult life. And when I went to the Vedanta Center, it was wonderful to be around Swami Ishtananda and his spiritual family there. And I was staying in a guest house, and I was supposed to have roommates, but the roommates canceled out. So I had the guest house all to myself. And so whenever I was at the guest house, I was in silence, and I was reading and meditating and just contemplating the reasons I was there. And had a wonderful experience visiting there. And when I got back home, I didn't want to turn anything on.
Priceless.
I wanted to maintain that silence, and it wasn't a question of should I turn something on. It wasn't that at all. I feel like something in me was changed to where I want something different, and that was 3 months ago, and it is largely still the case. I occasionally watch a TV show. I occasionally might listen to the radio when NPR has fun stuff on Saturdays. But otherwise, I want to maintain the space in my life to have a good mental diet, as the Swami says, by doing a lot more reading, and I'm sure you know the kind of stuff I'm reading.
Well, yes, but we must be mindful of what the Swami said. We can't be puritanical about this, and you're not being. Sure, it's best to abide in silence because it allows us to hear more clearly what we're generating inside of us, rather than being distracted by what somebody else is saying and the context from which they're saying it. This is one thing to keep in mind when you're watching a TV show or hearing a radio show. Whether the person intends it or not, they are sharing their worldview and their way of being in the world. That's what they do as a writer or performer, and all well and good. Uh, uh, but it's best to keep that in mind. If we want to be more self-possessed and self-determined, it's easier to do it in silence. So very well observed and very well experienced when you were alone there in the guest house in Tallahassee. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. That's priceless information.
I would, sorry, somebody was saying something?
No,
Go ahead, Sumesh.
I was going to share something similar where I observed about this Puritanism that so me and my wife were watching a reality show on TV, and I was commenting a lot about how the participants were doing, what they were doing, and my wife said something, and then I said something on top of that, and she said, "You become quite a preacher." Like sarcastic that and I realized I was judging everyone there, and then my mind got it that I was judging because I felt that I can see things better than them. So self-righteousness, that got in, and that's exactly what you were saying, that when we get into that, I was thinking that what they are doing, there's a better way to do things, but like that, and just it's exactly what we're talking here, that's what that can lead us to, like we have to be mindful of that, and that happened with me. I just got present.
yes. And good for you, Somesh, that you have a wife that can give you a gentle nudge this way, and that you can hear it, that you can hear what she's saying to you and process it in the way that you just described. Perfect, perfect. This is how we learn and grow. And we're constantly learning and growing. Sri Ramakrishna himself said, I learn something new every day about himself and about relationships and about the world and about so we're constantly learning and growing if we're attentive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I had something that I was going to say before Jeff commented, but now it seems even more relevant in a way. I've read this book and studied this book in class a number of times. I love how when you come back to a book over and over, things jump out at you that didn't before. And I love this part about a Hindu teacher tells us always talk to everyone about God. And I was thinking about that in music and in songwriting, because at one point, 30 years ago, when I started having a more spiritual relationship with the world, it started showing in my songwriting. But I never used the words, it's like somebody, a totally worldly person or a very spiritual person or anybody in between could get something out of the song. You don't hit people over the head with specifics, because it narrows it, of course. But what Jeff was talking about, watching shows and things like that, I've lived by myself most of my adult life, and I crave silence. I love just as quiet as it can be, but I do watch some streaming stuff, for entertainment, and I love a good British murder mystery. I mean, that's, I'll admit it, I don't even know why. Maybe it's just the good storytelling, but you can watch anything. I mean, and watch, not only talk about God to everyone, but you can watch any show. You don't have to watch a religious show. You can watch any show with a spiritual eye.
Precisely.
Yet you know. So, there's nothing wrong with watching a murder mystery,
Hell no, there's not.
reading a murder mystery, unless you're obsessed with it and you binge on them and you don't do anything else. But
Well,
anyway,
that's a whole other story. But is there anything inherently wrong with watching them? Of course not. Swami Swahananda was very devoted to the old Perry Mason show, the one that starred Raymond Burr. And he watched reruns of it virtually every morning. He would come to his room after breakfast, do some work, and then he would sit with a couple of ladies who routinely came to his room in the morning, and he would share that with them. And he really liked it. No harm, no foul.
it's good storytelling, and we
Exactly.
love a good story.
Right. Exactly. Good storytelling. Uh, our mind needs that recreation. It needs that recreation. There's no two ways
Brother Ankara,
about it. Yes.
this is Anshu.
Yes. Hello, Anshu.
Hello, brother. So I have a question that, it's really good to be in this group full of really old, wise people because I feel like I'm being elevated just by listening to you guys talk. But I do have the trouble of feeling the opposite of puritanical, feeling like I'm not pure at all. As you know, I've been struggling with drug addiction, and I always get this messaging from these Christian preachers that I'm in a Christian program right now, that I am an addict, and once an addict, always an addict. And they point to like the neuroscience, which is once you form these neural pathways in the brain with drug addiction, those neural pathways never go away completely. So my whole thing is, should I even be practicing Patanjali, or should I just focus on something else? Because I feel like this is kind of beyond me,
Dear heart, just think of yourself as the divine being in a suit of human clothing that is afflicted. It is afflicted with neurodivergence. My son is an alcoholic and drug addict. He's recovering. He has been recovering. He's now has 17 years in recovery. So I know this intimately. This is not some sort of theoretical experience. You can live successfully through this. And yes, these teachers that you're having are asking you to confront the fact that you've created some serious habits. Okay. But that which created the habits is far stronger than the habits. It is the divine being. And so you can be a functioning, successful adult human being in this world, acknowledging, yes, these neural pathways were created in my mind, but I can create other pathways. And should you study Patanjali, he tells you exactly how to do this. And one of the ways is these observances. You are not impure. You have done impure things. This is not the same at all. Your being, your inner being, is pure, holy, sacred. It is the divine being wearing this human clothing. So just be clear that that which created this is far stronger than the creation it created. It can create something new. And so just keep on keeping on. And don't, when the habits try to reassert themselves, if you're going to keep moving on in your sobriety, you simply have to, as Michele said earlier, you have to confront that. She talked about fear. Now we're talking about attraction and aversion. They're just different aspects of the same kinds of ways of being. You push through that attraction to that self-medication and its temporary relief of pain, knowing that it is A, temporary, and B, self-destructive. Those are the only ways to be successful in confronting it. So do not despair, my sweet brother. You are far more than your affliction.
Thank you, brother.
Okay.
Brother Shankara, can I add something to what you said to Anshu?
Please do. From your perspective, I'm sure it will be
Yes.
very helpful.
Yes. For Anshu, it's like they said you are an addict. Yes, we are. Like I am a diabetic. I am a sugar addict too. And my mind craves for sugar. I'm not an addict, but mind craves for sugar. Just like a diabetic mind craves for sugar, addiction gene always craves for the substance that we are used to. But it can be rewired. You know, neuroscience is proving to us 21 days of telling yourself continuously, and then it becomes normal for you. I have an addictive gene, but I can overcome this. You have to positively self-talk yourself out of it. You may make mistakes, fall down for every now and then, but pick up and get up and walk again. That's what makes you get back to your real self. And that gene is there. We know we have a gene. I have a sugar gene. That diabetes is always, diabetic mind always craves for sugar. You know, if you eat protein and then it doesn't, protein, fiber, rich foods, or just a drink or something, then it doesn't crave. So you know yourself, you educate yourself about it, then you follow those. Yama niyamas really will help. Definitely. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. That's all, Brother Shekhar. I don't want to take too much time of Jeff's.
No, thank you, dear. This is.
Thank you.
Can I add one little thing?
Oh,
Anshu,
by all means.
you're getting deluged with love here. I just, it's a struggle on your own, but you're not on your own. We're here with you even when you don't see us, and the divine presence is always there even when you can't feel it. And one thing, I have not struggled with addiction, but I do know how incredibly hard it is because I have loved ones who have. The thing that I've done in times of my life when I'm struggling with something that makes me feel helpless is I just ask the divine presence, will you please override this? This, whatever I'm feeling right now, like a feeling like I can't not use or I can't not drink. And I have no control. I just turn to the divine presence that is always there, even when I don't see it or feel it, and say, will you override this? Because you can do it. You have the power to do it. I don't have the power right now, so will you do it for me? So just a suggestion.
It is one of
Thank you.
It is one of the fundamental principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let go, let God. And it is right there in the 12 steps. So you're so right, Cindy. You ask the divine being, relieve me of this bondage of the self that I have created, that this life has created. Relieve me of it. And this is a constant prayer of the recovering alcoholic. Just what you said, and then this additionally saying, relieve me of the bondage of this self that has been created. So Cindy's absolutely right. You see how stimulative this discussion is of the niyamas? The niyamas are so powerful. There's so much there. So is there anything else?
Yeah, this is
Well,
Bhaskar.
I would like to
Shankar.
speak to this.
Hang on just a second. Somebody else was trying to speak for a moment.
Go ahead, Bhaskar.
Yeah, what I was trying to do is I wanted to go back to the comment that Jeff made about silence. And I actually want to go back to one of the first 10 sutras where we are actually talking about vrittis or mental modification. And I'm trying to understand that we have organs of perception, and that's where, you know, the different stimuluses are coming in, and then finally getting into the different parts of chitta where our mental modifications are coming. So when we go into silence, what we're probably doing is from the environment, we're stripping away all these possible sources that can create the mental modification of vrittis later on, which again is the ultimate game is to reduce the mental waves so that ultimately it becomes zero. So I was kind of trying to tie those two things back.
Yes, and the fifth step, the fifth part of yoga is pratyahara, which is a deliberate practice of withdrawal from the senses and our memory of sensory stimulation in citta. So yes, it's exactly it. We withdraw into silence. This is the practice of contemplation, concentration, and meditation. One of the steps, the fifth step, is pratyahara. Pratyahara is preliminary to concentration until we learn to avoid the stimulation of the senses. And it is avoiding, not repressing, simply avoiding or ignoring, letting them be what they are, but in a sense, sinking below them. This is exactly it. So you're very right, Bhaskar. It is withdrawal from the stimulation. And we can do it by eliminating it from our physical environment. Then we learn to eliminate it from our interior environment. But as Jeff pointed out and others seconded, it's very helpful when your physical environment is silence.
There's
And solitude.
There's one other observation I want to make from actually something that Jeff read today. It's in the second paragraph, at the bottom of the second paragraph, and it's right after the word radio romancing, etc. And it reads, "It's simply this: they encourage us to drift into a relaxed reverie, neutral at first, but soon colored by anxiety." So again, I would go back to the sutras from 5 to 10, where they actually tell you about the different mental modification. And I'm kind of reading drift into relaxed reverie. That's probably verbal delusion or vikalpa. And then
Yes.
it's colored by anxieties, which means something from your memory or smriti is coming and coloring that. So it's really two vrittis playing together right there.
Yes, exactly. And many more. You know, our mind is full of these mental impressions from countless incarnations in different forms, even before we began to take human form. And all of those mental impressions are there and stimulated by the gunas. And so this is why we have to ultimately we get to practicing pratyahara, withdrawing from all of that, sinking below it. We'll talk about that more when we begin to talk about pratyahara. But very well observed, Bhaskar. There was somebody else that wanted to talk at the same time Bhaskar started. Anything?
I was just going to add one more thing to Anshu, just to keep the company around us who are more accepting and supporting our interest of achieving this self, coming out of that addiction stuff. And you just keep your company around people who are more accepting of you and supporting you
Yes.
rather than demeaning company. They don't know you. So that's why we have to stay around like this type of community, spiritual community, plus more supportive community, family members, our friends. That helps a lot in this journey.
I believe Cindy used the word he was being deluged by love, and that was absolutely the case.
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
That is the priceless gift of this congregation to one another, that we love one another and we do not provoke or engage in misunderstandings. And that's why that prayer contains that. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Let us be gentle and sweet and loving as the parents are toward us. May the divine being support and nourish us. So we support and nourish one another in modeling ourselves on that. So we didn't get very far ahead in the book, but that's not the point of a class. The point of a class is to understand what is said in the book before we can move on. We can read the book start to finish, nonstop, and get very little out of it. But if we do it this way, we get a great deal out of it.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Before we wrap up, the following, the next shloka is very short, and it might be good to squeeze it in because we've already been talking about what it says.
Squeeze away.
Okay, the squeezing shall commence. Shloka 33. To be free from thoughts that distract one from yoga, thoughts of an opposite kind must be cultivated. And to repeat, to be free from thoughts that distract one from yoga, thoughts of an opposite kind must be cultivated. And the very short commentary is, this is the technique of raising an opposing thought wave in order to overcome distracting thought waves in the mind. It has already been discussed in connection with the first 5 aphorisms of chapter 1.
Exactly. And this is one of Patanjali's techniques. We replace lower samskaras, lower thought wave forms, with higher samskaras. These lower samskaras come with the package. We have been, Swami Vivekananda says, we have been incarnated so many times, in so many forms, since the dawn of creation, picking up all kinds of impressions along the way, some of them not auspicious. And so the left mind tends to focus on those because it loves drama. And so we have to replace those with, what does the shloka actually say?
It says, hold on a second, I closed my book already. To be free from thoughts that distract one from yoga, thoughts of an opposite kind must be cultivated.
So this cultivation of these opposite thoughts, higher thoughts, and this is what the niyamas do. The niyamas will help us as we practice what the niyamas say. They help us promote and create these higher opposing thoughts. Anything else from anyone before we close? All right, dears. Just a word about what's coming tomorrow morning. The title of the talk is The Master and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Agree. And what they agree on is that bhakti, the bhakti path, need not be and is inherently not dualistic. So this is about the non-duality of the bhakti path. That's what we'll talk about tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And then, of course, we have our classes next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, and so on. And just a word, we will be celebrating the Master's birthday, Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. It falls this year, according to the lunar calendar, on February 21st. But because it's auspicious to have as many people come as possible, we will celebrate it with a puja from our chapel, zoomed from our chapel, on Sunday, February 26th. And Aditya Chaturvedi will be the pujari. And before he does the puja, there'll just be a short talk by myself on why Sri Ramakrishna is so to be celebrated. Om Hari Om. O dearly beloved Lord, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, come to me," offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Om Amen. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we be always, and know we are always, in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. O beloved, make it so. Any final thought, comment from anyone? All right, dear. Until tomorrow morning, for those of you who decide to join us, it's been so good to be with you as always. And this is just exactly what studying the art of spirituality together means. We've done it again. Love you all so very much. See you again tomorrow morning or whenever you choose to grace us with your presence.
Thank you, everyone.
Jai Thakur.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, brother.